Let me guess, you're staring at your phone analyzing the 3-word reply they sent 3 hours late. You're rereading the conversation, wondering if you said something wrong. You're convincing yourself they're just busy. Again, stop. This isn't about your worth. This is about emotional patterns. Theirs, not yours. You might be texting someone who's not emotionally available. You might be texting a dismissive avoidant, someone who keeps you close enough to not lose you, but far enough to never fully let you in. They avoid emotional intimacy like it's a trap, and the more you chase clarity, the more they disappear into the fog. Here's the truth: it's not personal, it's not your fault, and no, you're not too much. But you do need to recognize the signs, because your peace is worth more than their inconsistency. So here are 7 signs you're texting a dismissive avoidant. 1. They give short, vague replies, no warmth, no curiosity, no emotional engagement. Just enough to say, "I responded." 2. They don't ask follow-up questions. Your messages are paragraphs. Theirs are cold texts with zero depth. 3. They avoid conversations about feelings, bring up anything vulnerable, and they deflect, joke, or go silent. 4. They take forever to reply, and it's not because they're busy. It's a pattern of emotional distance. 5. They get defensive when you ask for clarity. You're overthinking or too sensitive. Suddenly it's your fault for wanting connection. 6. They breadcrumb a sweet message here and there to keep you hooked, but no consistent emotional investment. 7. You constantly feel anxious or unsure. Texting them feels like walking on eggshells. That's not love, it's emotional survival. Listen to me, you are not here to decode mixed signals. You are not a puzzle solver in someone else's emotional maze. When someone wants to connect, they make it known. If they're inconsistent, avoidant, and emotionally distant, believe them. They're showing you their capacity. Now here's the hard truth wrapped in love. You cannot text your way into emotional safety with someone who's afraid of intimacy. You can't overfunction your way into being loved better. So stop shrinking, stop rewriting texts, start recognizing the signs, and reclaim your peace. Because someone out there will respond with presence, not confusion, and you won't have to chase clarity, because it'll feel calm, honest, and safe. Overthinking texts from an avoidant partner creates emotional anxiety. You sit there, staring at your phone, analyzing a message that says okay. Like it holds a hidden meaning, you reread it again and again, looking for something, anything, that proves they care, that they're still interested, that you didn't say something wrong. But silence stretches longer. Their responses stay short, and your mind spirals. You start second, guessing everything you said. You wonder if your last text was too emotional, too direct, too needy. You edit your replies like you're walking through a verbal minefield, afraid to say the wrong thing. Your heart races every time they take hours to respond. You make excuses for them. Maybe they're just busy, maybe they're overwhelmed, maybe they didn't see the message, but deep down you feel it, that unsettling tension. That lack of emotional safety, the constant need to decode their tone, their timing, their intention. This isn't just about texting. It's about the emotional weight you carry trying to connect with someone who doesn't give much back. Someone who treats vulnerability like a threat. Someone who sees emotional closeness as pressure. And while you overthink their 3-word replies, they feel fine. They feel in control because they're not emotionally invested the same way you are. You're hoping for connection, they're avoiding it. That imbalance becomes a breeding ground for anxiety. You find yourself stuck between what you feel and how little they respond to it. Every message becomes a question mark. Every pause feels like rejection, and yet you hold on because you remember the rare times they were present, the random warmth, the occasional deep talk, the temporary feeling of closeness. But avoidant partners often give just enough to keep you hoping while never really showing up. They disconnect when it matters most. They keep you guessing so you never feel secure, and that guessing game, it's exhausting. It drains your confidence. It makes you question your worth. It teaches you to suppress your needs just to keep the conversation going. just to avoid pushing them away. But here's what happens in that silence: you lose touch with your own voice. You start shaping your words to fit their comfort, not your truth. You make yourself smaller, quieter, easier to digest. You stop texting what you feel and start texting what won't scare them. And with every message you filter, you move further away from real connection, because real connection doesn't live in fear. It doesn't require decoding. It's not built on silence, vagueness, or cold replies. Dismissive avoidants fear intimacy and emotional closeness. They may not say it outright. They may not even realize it themselves. But the moment someone gets too close, they pull away. They shut down, disconnect, or suddenly become distant. You feel it in the shift, the change in tone, the shorter replies, the delay in communication, the sudden coldness that wasn't there before. They can seem confident, even charming on the surface, independent, self-sufficient, in control. But emotional connection feels like a threat to that control. Because intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability means risk. Risk of being seen, risk of being hurt, risk of losing the armor they've spent years building. To them, emotional closeness feels unsafe. It's not that they don't want love. It's that love feels overwhelming when it asks them to open up. They've learned somewhere along the way that needing others is dangerous, that depending on someone can lead to disappointment, rejection, or abandonment. So instead, they detach, they hide behind silence, they intellectualize feelings instead of expressing them. They push you away just when you start to lean in. They create emotional distance even if they're physically present. And when you ask for connection, when you express your needs, they often get defensive. They accuse you of being too needy, too emotional, too intense. But what they're really saying is, I don't know how to handle this level of closeness. They fear the messiness of emotions. They fear the responsibility that comes with showing up emotionally for someone else. They fear losing their independence in the process of letting someone in. So they minimize problems. They downplay emotions. They retreat into logic or distraction. They stay in control by staying emotionally distant. And for the person who loves them, this can feel confusing and painful. You might think if you're just more patient, more understanding, they'll eventually open up. You might blame yourself when they pull away. You might try harder to be easier to love. But the truth is, dismissive avoidants don't fear you. They fear what intimacy awakens in them, the part of them that's been shut down. The part that once felt unsafe expressing emotion. The part that learned to protect themselves by disconnecting. So when love approaches, their instincts scream, pull back. Not because they don't care, but because closeness feels unfamiliar, unpredictable, even dangerous. And instead of leaning in, they armor up. They shut doors that were just starting to open. They put walls where bridges were being built, because deep down, love feels like a risk they're not sure they're ready to take. Their replies are often short, cold, and emotionally flat. You send a message with warmth, vulnerability, maybe even a little excitement, and what you get back, a dry K, a lifeless sure, a neutral yeah, with a period at the end. No emojis, no curiosity, no follow-up. It's like talking into a void where emotions don't echo back. You keep wondering if you said too much, if you came on too strong, if you're imagining the coldness that you clearly feel. But you're not imagining it. Their messages are bare, stripped of feeling, and painfully neutral. There's no playfulness, no affection, just data, just facts, just the minimum, and yet, this is how dismissive avoidants operate. They communicate without emotional color, because color means risk. Warmth means vulnerability, and vulnerability is something they've spent their whole life avoiding. To them, short replies are a form of protection. Less emotion means less exposure. If they don't express too much, they don't feel too much. If they don't feel too much, they won't get hurt. But for you on the receiving end, it's disorienting. It feels like rejection dressed in politeness. You start shrinking your messages, mirroring their tone, trying not to come off as too emotional, too invested. You convince yourself it's not a big deal, that maybe they're just bad at texting, that maybe this is just how they are. But deep down, you crave connection. You want to feel a spark, not silence. You want a conversation, not a transaction. You long for replies that feel alive, that carry interest, that hold space for you. But instead, you get flatness, you get cold, you get distance, and no matter how many times you try to warm it up, it keeps feeling the same, detached. Like their replies are there just to check a box, not to build a bond. Sometimes they'll say just enough to keep you from walking away, but not enough to make you feel seen. They respond, but they don't connect. They answer, but they don't engage, and the absence of emotional tone becomes deafening. It's not about words, it's about what those words don't carry. No reassurance, no enthusiasm, no sign that your presence matters to them. And that silence between the lines, it says more than their words ever do. They avoid vulnerable or emotional conversations. The moment things start to feel real, they back off. The second you open up, share something deep, or ask how they feel, you can feel the tension rise. Suddenly, they're distracted, they change the subject, they make a joke, or worse, they go quiet. It's like a wall goes up the minute emotions enter the room. A conversation that could bring you closer turns into something they run from. They'll talk about anything else, work, weather, weekend plans, but not their feelings, not yours, not theirs, not the space between you. And when you bring up something that matters to you, something personal, something raw, they often respond with discomfort. They look away, give a vague reply, or say something that shuts it down completely. You might hear, "Why are we talking about this?" Or "Can we not do this right now?" Or the classic, "You're too emotional." It's not just avoidance. It's fear of being exposed, fear of getting close, fear of having to feel something they've worked hard to bury. Vulnerability is a doorway to intimacy, and they are not ready to walk through it. To them, vulnerability is dangerous. It invites connection, and connection means risk. So they stay guarded, detached, safe. They've learned somewhere in their past that emotional openness leads to pain. That if they share their feelings, they'll be judged, abandoned, or misunderstood. So now, they protect themselves by avoiding the entire conversation. But for you, it feels like hitting a wall. You want to be known. You want to understand them. You want to connect on a deeper level, but they keep pulling away. They keep you at surface level. They let you in just enough to keep things going, but never enough to truly feel close. And over time, you start doubting yourself. You start wondering if you're asking for too much, if being emotionally open is somehow wrong. You begin to silence your own needs just to avoid pushing them further away. You begin to walk on eggshells around honesty, and slowly, you lose the very thing that makes relationships meaningful, emotional connection. Because without emotional conversations, there is no intimacy. Without vulnerability, there is no real bond, just two people exchanging logistics but never sharing truths, and deep down you feel it, that emptiness, that longing, that frustration of never really touching the heart of the person right in front of you. Defensive behavior arises when you ask for clarity or connection. You ask a simple question, something honest, something real. Maybe you want to know where things are going. Maybe you're asking how they feel. Maybe you're just trying to understand why they've been distant, but instead of an open response, you get tension, you get attitude, you get pushback. Suddenly, you're the problem, you're too much, you're overthinking, you're always starting something, and all you did was ask for connection. All you did was want to feel close, but to them it feels like pressure, like a demand, like a threat. Their defenses rise fast, like a reflex. Their tone shifts, their words get sharper, their energy changes. And what should have been a moment of clarity becomes a battlefield of blame. They may accuse you of being dramatic, of creating issues where there are none, of never being satisfied, but it's not about satisfaction. It's about needing to feel secure. It's about needing to feel seen, and that need for them feels dangerous. Defensiveness is how they protect themselves. It's a shield, a way to dodge the discomfort of emotional exposure. Because answering your questions means admitting vulnerability, and vulnerability is what they fear most. They don't want to look at their own discomfort, so they project it. They flip the script. They make you question your own intentions. Your tone, your timing, your right to even ask. You walk away confused, defeated, maybe even guilty, wondering if you came on too strong, wondering if your need for connection was somehow wrong. You start editing yourself, making your emotions smaller, avoiding important conversations just to keep the peace, just to avoid triggering that same wall of resistance. But it's not peace if you're constantly silencing yourself. It's not connection if every attempt to get closer is met with defense. And it leaves you in a strange place, close enough to care, but not close enough to feel safe, not close enough to feel heard. You end up in emotional limbo, tiptoeing around truth, trying not to trigger another storm, trying to keep it light even when your heart feels heavy, all because their defenses speak louder than your needs, all because clarity for them feels like a confrontation. And closeness feels like a risk they're not willing to take. They reply late as a pattern, not due to genuine busyness. At first, you tell yourself it's no big deal. They're probably just having a busy day. They have work, errands, life, just like anyone else. But then it happens again and again and again. Hours go by, sometimes days, and when they do respond, it's casual, as if nothing unusual happened. As if leaving someone hanging in silence is completely normal. You start to notice the pattern. You send a message filled with care or vulnerability, and the response doesn't come until long after the moment has passed. There's no urgency, no consideration, just space, too much of it. And it's not because they're actually too busy, because they still post on social media, they still watch stories, they still have time to text others. They just don't prioritize replying to you, because to them, connection doesn't feel urgent. Emotional closeness doesn't feel necessary. It feels like pressure, so they delay not to hurt you, but to protect their own distance. They keep you at arm's length not by saying it, but by showing it. Replying late becomes their way of controlling how much access you have, how much closeness you feel, how often you reach for them. It keeps things on their terms. They avoid being pulled into conversations they're not ready for. They avoid emotional weight by simply ignoring the message until it's convenient, but you feel it. You feel that sting of waiting, the anxiety of wondering if you said something wrong. The disappointment that builds with each hour of silence. You keep checking your phone, rereading the last message, trying to convince yourself not to care, but you do, because time matters, because being ignored doesn't feel neutral. It feels personal. They may say they're just not good at texting, that they don't like being on their phone, that they didn't see it. But those excuses wear thin when it becomes routine, when emotional availability consistently shows up as emotional delay. And you start to shrink yourself, you send fewer messages, you keep things light, you wait for them to initiate, hoping that will make a difference, but it doesn't, because this isn't about time. It's about emotional avoidance. About someone who doesn't want to feel obligated to respond, who doesn't want to feel emotionally pulled in, so they reply late, not because they're overwhelmed with life, but because closeness overwhelms them. And silence becomes their escape. So if you've been stuck waiting, checking your phone, doubting your worth, adjusting your needs just to stay easy, for them, take a breath and step back. Late replies, emotional distance, vague answers, they are not signs for you to try harder. They are signs for you to protect your peace. You deserve connection that's present. You deserve communication that feels consistent. You deserve someone who doesn't make you question your value every time you reach out. Stop chasing clarity from someone who fears closeness. Start choosing yourself, your calm, your emotional safety. Because love should feel like security, not silence, like presence, not patterns of avoidance. And when someone truly values you, you won't have to decode a thing.